Ovid turns from the resolution of Orpheus to pursue young boys. He turns to the place where he does it, and it takes a rather chaste and interesting turn. The scene that he lays out is one of a barren field. There was a hill, and on this hill there was an open space, a level area made green by all the grasses growing there. The place lacked shade until that poet born of heaven came to be in residence. So Orpheus shows up in basically an empty field, and he wants to sit and reflect on his new life and make music, make art, poetry, and as a place for doing so, he begins to sing his songs and pluck his lyre in this open field. And out of the open field, shade trees begin to grow. A profusion of them, a remarkable variety of them. He summoned many shade trees to his presence. The oak tree sacred to great Jupiter, a grove of poplars, once Heliades, and the Italian oak with deep green leaves, soft linden, beech and laurel still unwed, and the tender hazel and the useful ash, providing us with spears and javelins. Pine without knots, the acorn-laden ilex, the genial plane tree, and the maple too, unrivaled in the brilliance of its hue, and river-dwelling willows, lotus trees, thin tamarisk, and boxwood evergreen, and myrtle with its berries green and black, viburnum with its berries gray and blue, and you as well, O twining ivy, came, along with tendrilled vines and vine-clad elm, the mountain ash, the spruce, the arbutus, encumbered with its fruit of brilliant red, and victory's reward, the supple palm, and the pine tree, bare to near its shaggy top, so pleasing to Cybele, mother of gods, since her beloved Attis put aside his manhood for that trunk in which he stiffened. That's another myth, another transformation myth. But what you have there is this enormous fertility growing up out of the earth, at times quite phallic. Well, first of all, the image of these trees growing up is rather phallic, but the emphasis on the vines, the emphasis of the spears and javelins, the imagery is not all that subtle. But this is a place where Orpheus has gone to reflect and sing about his decision to pursue purely homosexual relationships. There is thus a kind of fruitfulness about it. There is a generation that comes from homosexual relationships. It's an odd little placement of this story right after the Eurydice story, and it's not clear exactly what it's doing, because it gets to the some of the other stories pretty quickly, but it's this curious little image of fecundity out of a different form of sexual desire, a transformed fecundity. From there he goes into Ovid goes into the myth itself of Cyparissus, a young boy who is ultimately transformed into a cypress tree, and is a young boy who is beloved of Apollo, and becomes an image of somewhat frustrated sexual desire on the part of a god for a human. How we started with Daphne. Here, Apollo, and the evocation of this particular myth in Ovid is a little bit subtle. It's a little bit different in different traditions. Here you have Apollo, who is enamored of this young boy, and one day the boy just happens to come across a stag wandering around in his forest, and The stag is beautiful. The stag is notably rather luxurious, even decadent, laid out in a jeweled collar, a silver amulet tied to his brow, jiggled when he moved, and matching pearls hung from each ear. He's in full-on drag there. The drag stag, if you will. The boy is simply enamored of it, and he rides the stag and he caresses the stag, and it is quite suggestive. You, like a horseman, sat on his back, and joyfully you led him where you wished to, guiding his tender mouth with purple reins. Oh, come on. Yeah. But then one day, one hot summer day, always when it's hot out, the boy, and it's a little the Latin is a little naughty, and translations differ significantly, but ultimately it seems the boy kills the stag with his javelin. Yeah. The symbolism. What are you gonna do? The boy is distraught. He has this is another lost love, a lost love through a sudden death. Immediate echo of the Eurydice episode with Orpheus, but here transposed to a human animal match, if you will. And Apollo shows up, and he's trying to comfort him, and there is again something rather suggestive and lascivious about this. Phoebus tried everything to comfort him, enjoining him to moderate his grief and suit it to the nature of his loss. The boy kept groaning nonetheless, and begged the finest and the final gift from heaven, that he should be allowed to mourn forever. That line, and suit it to the nature of his loss, is very telling, I think. That suggests as well proportion, the prudent, unemotional, rational Greco-Roman tradition of logic and not getting too perturbed, not getting too emotional, just keeping everything within moderation. Suit it to the nature of the loss. Don't get too upset. Think about it, reflect on it, keep it within bounds. But the boy can't. The love is overpowering. Once again, the love is overwhelming. The loss of that love is devastating. So Apollo cannot talk the boy out of it, and enormity of grief had left him drained, and now his limbs began to turn bright green, and now the locks upon his snowy brow became a crown of bristles as he turned into a tree that sways but does not bend, whose slender tips look up to starry heaven. The god, grief-stricken, told him, "You will be mourned by myself, and others you will mourn, and by your presence you will signal grief." Apollo, the god of poetry and music, art, is here. He has transformed this young boy into a monument to grief, to love that has been cut short, to frustrated sexual desire. It's not that different than the Pan episode, where frustrated sexual desire led to the invention of the pipes. It's not that different from Daphne, where frustrated sexual desire leads to art, leads to something of beauty. And here you're really kind of getting at the heart of it and hinting at where it's going to come. Apollo is here kind of pursuing and has to let the boy go. And he creates this tree that symbolizes grief, this tree that symbolizes his own frustration. He creates it. The god of art creates this. So the tree is a work of art because it represents something more than its physical presence. The tree that sways but does not bend. Flexibility. Change. Flexibility? It's a persistent and somehow evolving theme.